Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday, and that means New Comic Book Day, and that's when fedora-tipping funk monsters leave their PlayStations just long enough to waddle to their LCS, their local comic shop, where they stand in front of the new release shelf so that no one else can get at it. Uh, and that new release shelf is full of new issues, Marvel and DC and a whole bunch of other things, all sorts of good, godly stuff to look at. I have recently, in the course of making these Wednesday comic videos, I have recently succumbed to the siren song of weekly comics after years without really paying much attention to them. I'm not so much of an experimenter that I'm going to bother with Marvel comics, so I'm sticking with DC, the home of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, the home of legendary, big, epic superheroes. And big epic stories now that comic book stories are geared towards graphic novels, they're always multi-part and they're always large stakes. And one of the latest story, the one that I've been following from its beginning, in fact, the one that really ushered me back into the world of weekly comic books, is the Drowned Earth storyline, in which the Greek god Poseidon is missing and presumed dead, and in his absence, the ocean gods of other worlds come to Earth with the intent to drown it, to conquer it by introducing a floodwater that turns anyone who touches it into a monster. And naturally, the first player that they take off the chessboard is the king of the seas for Earth, Aquaman, and he is a captive for most of the early chapters of Drowned Earth. But the Justice League fights on. They're hopelessly outmatched, and they don't make much headway, and they're being obstructed at every turn, not just by these ancient extraterrestrial deities, but also by the Legion of Doom, their supervillain counterpart, led by Lex Luthor, and populated by a whole bunch of characters. The one who concerns us this time around is the longtime Aquaman enemy, Black Manta. At one point in his captivity, Aquaman's powers are taken from him and given to Black Manta. And that is the first indication that we get in the course of Drowned Earth that there might be more to Aquaman, that the writers and editors behind this storyline, and behind Aquaman just in general for the DC continuity, might be planning a power upgrade. They might be planning to change this character into a heavy hitter. Because he hasn't been in the past. It's been pretty clear in almost all of his incarnations that he doesn't really have super strength. And the element that was played up a lot in most of his earlier comic books in previous decades was his vulnerability, not his strength. The fact that he could only stay out of water for a certain amount of time. There's actually a great Nick Cardy Aquaman cover from 40 years ago in which some ordinary 2-bit gangsters have strung him up on a pier just out of touch of the water. And they're telling him, don't worry, Aquaman, the tide will be up in about an hour. And he's got a look of panic on his face. And he's saying, but if I don't have water, I die in 2 minutes. And you look at that cover, and I'm sure that Nick Cardy meant it to be really dramatic. But instead, it's the most pathetic superhero cover I've ever seen. You look at it and think, okay, well, maybe if you ask really nice or you cry, they'll let you loose. And then you can just slip away into the ocean like a goldfish. And the reason that I have that issue in mind is because a whole string of those great Aquaman issues from 40 years ago with Nick Cardy covers and Jim Aparo artwork, they're just tremendously enjoyable. And a whole string of them have been reproduced. They were actually at my LCS as a hardcover called The Quest for Mera. That is Mera, Aquaman's wife, superpowered undersea superhero in her own right. I remember those issues. I bought those Aquaman issues when they were first coming out, and I saw them now in a hardcover. I don't know. I haven't managed the double think of buying individual issues and still buying graphic novels. Collections and graphic novels like that used to be the reason why I entered the comic shop in the first place. And now I went in and I left it there. Partly because it's a hardcover, and I'm sure that it will be a paperback, and I'm not sure that I want the hardcover. I'm not sure I want to bother with it, and also because I looked at the issues that were in that collection, and I thought, well, okay, I have those issues here in a box somewhere. I've never been sufficiently pulled to go and find them and read them again. I've never been sufficiently pulled to do that. So if I haven't been, maybe I don't like them enough to get a hardcover. Maybe I'll wait until it's in paperback, or maybe try and get the publisher to send me one. But that Aquaman was an ordinary person who could breathe underwater and talk to fish, command sea life, whales, dolphins, fish, octopuses, that sort of thing. That was Aquaman. The trident was only symbolic, and he had no superpowers other than that. And that was a bit odd, because Aquaman shares the exact same origin as Marvel Comics character Prince Namor the Submariner, one of their archetypal three characters. They both have an Atlantean mother who was born under the ocean and a human father. And yet, Prince Namor has, he's a mutant, a superpowered mutant. He has wings on his ankles that allow him to fly at almost sonic speed and up high into the stratosphere. He can carry huge amounts of weight, even with just those little ankle wings. And he himself is invulnerable to harm. Bursting shells, machine gun fire, nothing hurts him. And he's super strong. Strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the Hulk if he's fully hydrated. And Aquaman very much was not. The exact counterpart character in the DC world, but just a guy who can breathe underwater. So that he was always the weak link for the Justice League. Any major villain who was going to attack the team would always take out Aquaman first. And so that in my beloved TV cartoon, Super Friends, when push came to shove in various episodes, Aquaman simply had, the writers simply had to make Aquaman more powerful. They just had to do it. They had to make it so that he had super strength. You'd think that he would have super strength if he grew up underwater, but one way or another, that was in a bit of flux. And I think, as you can see on the cover here of this issue, DC is putting the logo for the Aquaman movie, which comes out at the end of December. They're putting it on the covers of these things. This is Aquaman Justice League Drowned Earth #1. This is the conclusion to the story, to the Drowned Earth story. And I think maybe part of the rationale behind maybe giving Aquaman a bit of a power upgrade, I mean, he's been getting one for a while. The Jeff Johns, Ivan Reis reimagining of the character that kicked off this whole iteration of Aquaman is significantly more powerful than any version of Aquaman that had appeared before. He can burst his way through steel doors. If you shoot him, the bullet probably won't hurt him, and he will heal right away. That sort of thing. Can blast himself up out of the water at enormous speeds. That I like. It's a nice, graceful, organic way to upgrade a character's power set. And it's pretty clear that this character needs that kind of an upgrade. Maybe not an enormous upgrade. He doesn't have to be Superman level, but still, he has to be more powerful than he was. And it looks to me like Drowned Earth is going to be kind of a springboard to make that happen. Certainly there's a whole lot of, in this concluding volume, there's a whole lot of excessively complicated mystical mumbo-jumbo that could break anyway. And in this issue, this is the climax of the whole story, and the extraterrestrial sea gods look like they're going to win. They're about to unleash a gigantic monster on Earth that will kill all living things on the planet. And Aquaman and his wife, Mera, have uncovered various ancient Atlantean mystical artifacts which, combined together, give them the ability to kill these space gods and thereby undo the damage that they're doing. And Aquaman, throughout this issue, steadfastly refuses to do that. It was one of my favorite parts of this issue. He's told over and over again, now that you have the power in your hands to kill these beings, let's do it before we run out of time. The monster that they've unleashed on the Earth is more powerful than the Justice League. If we don't stop them soon, we won't have a chance to stop them. And Aquaman steadfastly refuses. He has learned something. I'm not going to spoil the big giveaway from the previous issue in Drowned Earth, but he has learned something about the original voyage of these extraterrestrial sea gods to Earth thousands of years ago. And as far as he's concerned, he owes them an apology, not the other way around. And he wants to make it right. He wants them to communicate rather than fight. And I like that. That's a great stance for a hero to take. And this issue continues the flashback moments to Arthur Curry's past as a boy, all of which I think are important. But the main thing here is that the upshot of Drowned Earth, once the storyline concludes, there's a wonderful sort of a cliffhanger at the end, because the Aquaman pays the ultimate price for protecting the Earth and saving it from the betrayal of Black Manta and the damage that might be done by all of this extraterrestrial nonsense. And at the end of the issue, is a clear springboard to a new chapter in Aquaman's life. Let's put it that way. And I have to think that when all is said and done, when the dust of this whole series settles, the editors and writers probably had the movie in mind, because in the Aquaman movie, which I have seen now 3 or 4 times, I absolutely love it. I think it's going to be a hit. In the Aquaman movie, there is very little doubt by the end of the movie that this character is extremely powerful, physically powerful, mystical powers, that sort of thing. That he's not just a Batman who can breathe underwater. And that's great. And I think that the writers probably thought, well, I think the process probably went hand in hand of upgrading this character. I don't know if I will follow Aquaman after this. I'm sort of taking these things as I go. I'm not really planning ahead. I'm sort of taking these things as I go, which is why I probably will never be a subscriber at my local comic shop, because I just don't think I'm regular enough for them. And they also don't seem to have their head in the game, as it were. I might go to a different comic shop and see if I can just talk to them about my habits, my buying habits. But big events like this, now that I'm kind of caught up on the fallout of a lot of the previous ones, I think I'll probably be on board for a lot of them. This one, certainly, Drowned Earth, I'm very glad that I got. It was exciting from start to finish. And it fits well with my new philosophy towards comics, which is, if I'm not going to get the graphic novels and the collections at comic shops, and I passed one up today, so I'm clearly not going to, then I'm going to enjoy them in this format. And the sacrifice that I make in the fact that these are not books, they're a little more cumbersome to store, has a benefit, which is that I get the fun of going to the comic shop. I get the fun of something new every week. So it evens out. I'm willing to give this a try for a little while longer. So I finished Drowned Earth, and I really liked it. So I now that I have all the individual chapters, I will probably reread it. And if I want to reread it in the future, this is the format in which I will do it. In individual issues, I will never buy a Drowned Earth trade paperback. And one thing that I noticed while I was flipping through this issue is full of house ads. One of the ones that's really good is the new house ad for the Aquaman movie. Home is calling. I don't know if you can make it out in the crappy light, but that is Jay Momoa and a sea full of sharks. That is awesome. That is just awesome. But quite a few of the house ads in here were for upcoming DC events. One of them, of course, made me angry, and that is the upcoming events in Superman, where Superman's boy, John Kent, returns. And as you can see, he's going to be a fully grown teenager, even though he's 2 years old, and he's going to have all sorts of moral ambiguities, probably a villain or something or other, and be hugely powerful. And I don't like the look of it at all. I am firmly planted in the long, large legion of comic book fans who absolutely loved the super family that was done until just a few years ago. Superman, Lois Lane were in love. They were a couple, and they had a boy. They had a child who was a little boy, and who the writer at the time said is going to stay a little boy for a very long time. The writer at the time said, I know the gimmick here is to constantly age these people really fast so that they're teen heroes, but I want the dynamic of a family. I want to preserve the dynamic of a family. I think it fits with Superman, and boy, oh boy, was that writer right. It does. It does fit with Superman. Superman has always been a dad kind of superhero. The big mistake of the new 52 was to try and make him young and edgy. Superman has always been a dad figure, very much like Batman has always been one. It was a wonderful, long overdue stroke of genius to have Superman be a married man with a son, a little boy. And that's over with. That house ad clearly shows that that's over with, and so I'm not sure that I'm ever going to like it. But another house ad was for the Martian Manhunter, who's going to get a comic of his own. And the Martian Manhunter is one of the only really archetypal DC characters that did not take off in the public imagination, never has. So he was a founding member of the Justice League. He's been around in comics forever and ever and ever, decades and decades and decades, as long as Aquaman. And yet, he's something about, I think, his name, as I've said on these Comic Book Wednesdays before, I think if he'd just been called the Martian, he would have taken off. But for one reason or another, he didn't. So he's getting an issue, a run of his own, that might be a lot of fun. And there was another one too, Batman and the Outsiders, which those of you with long comic book memories will remember was once a series of its own, where Batman left the Justice League to form a sort of a Black Ops side superhero team of his own, firmly under his command. A natural idea. I always liked the organic nature of it, the way that is something that Batman would do. With the original Batman and the Outsiders debuted, and I of course got the first issue, I objected only because I thought Batman would probably have stayed in the Justice League. He probably wouldn't have left to do it. And I don't know what's going to happen in this case, whether he will or not. But I think it's great that Batman and the Outsiders is getting a shot. And DC is also making a Freedom Fighters series. Don't know if it'll be a limited series or not. But the Freedom Fighters were superheroes that DC Comics acquired. They acquired the rights to another company's superheroes, and some of them are really interesting. The team, the Freedom Fighters on Earth X, has always been, I think, really interesting. So I'm glad they're getting an issue too, and I'm glad that DC is making new issues. It's just that you knew there would be it's just that. If I had an ideal DC lineup of titles, I might do Batman and the Outsiders. I might do Martian Manhunter, but there are things I would do first. I would like it if I don't know if DC will. I have no idea what the editorial drift of DC Comics is. For all I know, in a year I won't want to read anything they do. But I like the emphasis that they seem to be putting on the traditional stuff, on the big iconic heroes in big iconic stories. I like that. And I'd like to see them continue that. This is not going to be yet another plaintive call for a Legion of Superheroes comics. I think there should be one. Because talk about a long story DC property that is being ignored. But I'd also like a few more basics too. In fact, I'd like to see first issues for more basic stuff than Batman and the Outsiders or the Freedom Fighters. Like, for instance, I would like it if Lois Lane had her own comic book. She should. I think Black Canary should have her own comic book. I would like it very much if Robin had his own comic book. And what about Adam Strange? If you're going to do Batman and the Outsiders, you could surely do Adam Strange. I would like to see more basic stuff like that, rather than yet another team book or two. But I'm curious to know that is part and parcel of now being back in the world of buying weekly comics, is that I will be trying out first issues. God help us. I'll be inflicting my opinions of them on you. As on Wednesdays, this channel will turn briefly into a comics channel. But anyway, the main gist that I wanted to say is that this Wednesday we finish up Drowned Earth. And it ends in a wonderful way, wonderfully ambiguous way. All of our heroes think that Aquaman is gone, but he is not gone. And that means that the next story arc for Aquaman will be a classic, hero reinvention story arc where he finds himself, where he learns a new identity, that sort of thing. That can often go wrong. It will entirely depend on the writer, and the writer for the new arc of Aquaman is a writer who left nothing but scorched earth crap behind her at Marvel. So, not exactly hopeful. She would have to radically change the way she does things in order to not do that here. And I can't help but think that she was hired to duplicate what she did at Marvel, so that could bode ill. Fortunately, there's plenty more to look at. Plenty more. Including, if I remember correctly, there's a new Conan series coming up. I don't think that it's done by Marvel or DC. I think it's somebody else. I could be wrong. It could be that it's DC. But the artist for this new Conan series is an artist who has done a lot of superhero work, and the whole time that he was doing the superhero work, I was thinking, boy, this style is better suited to something that's not superheroes, people in costumes. I think it would match perfectly with Conan. We'll see. That's a first issue I will certainly get, regardless of who puts it out. But that's for now. For today, we're going to finish up with Drowned Earth, and with a possible rebirth, or at least the groundwork for a rebirth of the character of Aquaman. Fantastic. I'm all for it. And that was it. That was actually the only issue that I bought today. Wasn't even tempted to get anything else. And I wasn't really tempted for that hardcover volume of Aquaman reprints, which would once have been the only thing I went in for. So My habits are changing. That's very frightening. But anyway, that's your comics for today. I will be back next Wednesday with God knows what. I have no idea what I'll be getting next Wednesday. Drowned Earth is over, so something else will have to snag my interest. I'll let you know all about it then. Thank you, BookTube.